So, welcome to our Vegoforum. I'm Per-Anders Jande and I'm the chair of Swedish Food and Environment Information, or Svensk Mat- och Miljöinformation. And we are the main organizers behind Vegoforum. And I'll be the host for this webinar. And today's topic is veg in the EU. And we have three invited speakers who will talk about the topic of what's going on in the EU regarding reducing meat consumption and animal husbandry. And these things are prerequisites for the Union actually reaching its climate and biodiversity goals. And I'll just say some short, present the speakers fairly shortly. We have Jeroom Remmers from the TAPP Coalition, which is a coalition of NGOs, food manufacturers, farmers associations and others who work for a more sustainable food production system by proposing to show the true price of animal proteins for the consumer. And then we'll hear from Dr. Emanuele Zannini, who is the director of the Smart Protein Project, which is a large-scale EU-funded project with the partners in 22 countries aimed at developing the next generations of smart protein foods from plants and also what is today food waste. And last out, we have Malin Björk, who is a member of the European Parliament from the Swedish Left Party. And she will give some insights to what is happening on the political arena with these issues and how and the efforts she has been involved in. And we will end the discussion with the webinar with a panel discussion where I will ask the speakers some questions, and you can also ask questions to the speakers, and you do that in the chat, and I will pick them up during this panel discussion. And I also will say that tomorrow you will get a questionnaire where you can answer some questions about what you thought about this webinar, and we appreciate all feedback. So please fill out this questionnaire. And with that, I introduce our first speaker, Jeroom Remmers from the TAPP Coalition.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and good afternoon, everybody. So I'm the founder and director of the True Animal Protein Price Coalition. We are founded 3 years ago in the Netherlands, but we are working at European and international level also. We represent the majority of consumers, at least in West European countries. This was shown by consumer surveys, where we asked consumers if they supported our proposal, which is simply to tax meat on a level of the environmental costs per kilogram meat, but that meat tax revenues will be used for three things: for paying farmers to produce more sustainable and with more animal welfare levels, and reduce vegetable and fruit prices by reducing taxes or giving subsidies, and in the third place, compensating low-income groups. And with this package, there is a majority in the 3 countries where we had consumer surveys done. And also the right-wing political party voters, like Christian Democrats or liberals, are also in favor of this plan. So this is another question where we asked simply a meat tax of €1 per kilogram. This is a lower tax level compared to our proposal. But when you ask for a lower tax rate, then there is even a higher a majority of consumers who thinks it's a good idea to have a higher price on meat, a fair price on meat, which is fair for farmers and fair for the environment. But why do we need a higher price on meat? There are a lot of reasons for it, and you know it, of course, because you're on the Vegoforum. But first of all, there are some climate reasons. So meat consumption growth is not compatible with the climate goals, the Paris Climate Agreement. So on the right picture, you see that now greenhouse gas emissions from meat and dairy are now circa 14% of total greenhouse gas emissions, but in the future, they can go up to 80% in 2050 if the trends will go on that people eat more and more meat in the world. Even in Europe, it's still going up instead of going down. And this is a result of a lack of policies on the side of politicians. That they tax fossil fuels, who also cause a lot of greenhouse gases, but they don't tax food products, and especially not meat and dairy. Another reason, of course, is biodiversity loss. There was a report from Worldwide Fund that meat and dairy are causing up to 60% of biodiversity loss globally. So this is another very good reason to have policies on meat consumption reduction. And we all know that income of farmers is very low often, and they don't have financial means to invest in more sustainability or animal welfare because supermarkets pay a very low price. And so this is another reason. And the last reason is public health. In European countries, overconsumption of meat is very high, and it causes a lot of costs and damage to the public health. Here you can see that if the European Union would implement taxes on meat, like the TAPP Coalition is proposing, which means on average a price increase of 40%, then healthcare costs would also go down by a lot of money, by 9 billion euros per year. This was calculated by Oxford University. A real solution for a lot of problems would be to have price corrections to make healthy and sustainable food the most affordable choice. So to make unhealthy and unsustainable food products more expensive and reduce prices of healthy foods like vegetables and fruits. And this can be done in different ways. It can be an excise duty. This is a consumer tax per kilogram meat, like we have on tobacco or alcohol, or we can increase the VAT tariff, or of course, we also can have an import tax on meat and dairy, or a carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is more climate related. I think they can work all very well, but we advocate for a consumer tax, which is environmental based and health based. A lot of calculations were made, for instance, by the Sustainable Food Trust in the UK, and there it showed that the hidden cost of food are twice the actual price we pay in supermarkets. And most of it are from health costs, but also a lot of environmental costs. In the Netherlands, there was another study which we used for our calculations to base our tax proposal from CE Delft consultancy. And they only calculated some environmental costs like climate change and nitrogen emissions and biodiversity loss. And this means that beef would be most expensive if you pay the true price for it. Pork will also be more expensive, and chicken will be 26% more expensive, which is equal to 2 euros per kilogram. And for beef, it would be 5.7 euros per kilogram extra. Here you see how this can work in practice. In Berlin, there's a supermarket called Pennies who shows this to their consumers. It's just one store, but I hope they will increase it to more stores. And here you don't have to pay the true price, but at least you can see that the true price is much more than you really pay. What would be the effect of a meat tax it will be a 50% reduction of meat consumption. This was calculated by CE Delft. And it depends how you start the meat tax. We propose to start with a low tariff, and gradually in 5 or 10 years time, people should have to pay the full true price, and so the 40% more compared to supermarket prices. And this will lead to 50% meat consumption reduction. So here we made the schedule, how it works. So the consumers go to the shop, to the supermarket. They pay more for their meat. For European level, it's a little bit different numbers compared to the Dutch proposal. And the revenues of it can be used to pay farmers. You can see it above. So they can actually have a lot of income extra. But they and also the tax revenue can be used to make vegetables and fruits cheaper and compensate purchase power of the low income groups, so that politicians can tell this is a fair proposal. It doesn't hurt the lowest people. Meat is not exclusive only for the rich. Everybody can still eat meat. So I think this is something we need to. Here you can see what the different food prices would look like. This is for the Netherlands. So yeah, in 2030, the price increase would be, this is in the numbers you can see. So per kilogram, it would be €2 per kilogram for chicken extra, but this is calculated in 100 gram meat, because this is what people buy in the supermarket. So it's not really much, I think, but you will see it in your wallet if you have to pay it and if you still eat a lot of meat. This is how we propose revenues can be used in the Netherlands. It can be used for farmers. It can be used to reduce prices for vegetables and fruits and for compensations. And this is the way we think the subsidies for farmers can be used. It can be used to increase animal welfare, can be used for environmental and climate policies, to support farmers who reduce emissions, and it can be used for more nature at farm level. And this is how it can be distributed among the different sectors. And this is what it means per on average per farm. So for instance, a dairy farm can have up to €20,000 extra per year income, and other farms who have to make big changes and maybe reduce their livestock numbers, but they are every year compensated for it. And this is the calculated effects at Dutch level and European level of a meat tax. So it will have really a lot of effect on greenhouse gas emission reductions. It's 4 megaton CO2 reduction, but it can be even, this is as a result of lower consumption of meat, but when you use revenues to pay farmers, this can be even more. So we also calculated the reduction of number of cows and pigs. And we also calculated a lot of income generated because of lower healthcare costs. At EU level, it would be 120 megatons CO2 reduction, which equals 3% of all European greenhouse gas emissions, and €9 billion lower healthcare costs. So in different countries, there are already some proposals made. For instance, New Zealand said in 2025, they will start with carbon pricing meat and dairy. It's a start, it's a low tariff, but it's a start. And in Germany, politicians already said they are willing to also implement a tax on meat and dairy and eggs. It's are also low tariffs, but it's a start. This is for animal welfare improvements. And in Spain, for instance, in 2011, they decided to reduce the VAT tariff on vegetables and fruits from 8 to 4%, and to increase the VAT tariff on meat from 8 to 10%. So there are already, and in the Netherlands, there are also politicians who, and also our agriculture minister, who really supports our proposal. And I heard that Denmark is also starting carbon pricing, the whole industry, including agriculture. So there are already some countries who are preparing or already decided to start some taxing on meat and dairy. We know that it's carbon pricing is done on fossil fuels, but I think the next step would be carbon pricing for food products as well. And that's why we also started a campaign 2 months ago, a carbon pricing food campaign, starting with meat and dairy. And so this is our website. It's futurefoodpriceorg. And we asked 50 countries with the highest meat consumption levels to start implementing policies on to reduce meat and dairy consumption. Here you can see the meat consumption levels, the 50 countries who eat most meat. So USA is, well, outside Hong Kong, which is not really a country, but USA is eating most meat, and then Australia, Argentina, New Zealand, Brazil. But Europeans also eat a lot of meat, so there's a lot of work to do. And so this is our website again. We ask commitments from policy makers. This is focused on the climate conference in Glasgow. And already a lot of companies and NGOs signed this open letter to those presidents. Here you can see a few of them, but already 90 organizations representing 5,000 companies and NGOs signed the open letter. So we hope this month it will even increase more, so that we can show the world that this is a policy recommended by a lot of people and organizations. Maybe you know some organizations or companies who are maybe willing to sign too, then they can send their logo to us, and we will send this open letter in the end of October to the ministers and of agriculture, finance, and environment, and of course to the presidents, so they all know that this is an option which is really needed. So thank you for your time, and I'm willing to answer all your questions, because this is maybe a short but complicated topic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeroom. And we'll, as I said, we'll pick up all questions in the discussion at the end of this webinar. But for now, I thank you and invite Dr. Emanuele Zannini to speak instead. Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
I think Spencer, you start my video. Yeah.
Yeah, start your video.
Okay, great. I'm sharing my slides. Here you go.
So.
Oops. Yes. Okay. Perfect. So let me thank you once again for the nice invitation and for giving the opportunity to present what we are doing in Europe, in particular with our EU-funded project, Smart Protein. But before start saying what we are doing, it will be, I think it's important to see where we are, to see basically why we are now, there is an urgent need to endorse and embrace a dietary shift, where you see the CO2's concentration is rising, temperatures are climbing, and wildlife is suffering. In the meantime, you see population is growing, even as more people than ever before are overweight. So this is quite a depressing slides, but actually gives you a clear idea where we are and why we should act now. So here, these pictures actually give you a general review where we are at the moment. You see 1 out of every 3 people suffer from malnutrition. Our food is too rich in fat, sugar, salt, and meat. Our natural resource is under pressures, and every day a third of what we purchase on the shop are basically wasted. So definitely we need to start produce differently and also eat differently. In a way, we are able to, let's say, break down this silos thinking among the actors and acting in the food system, make healthier foods safe and sufficient for everybody, and in particular affordable, and also able to redistribute, the income, and also basically have a fair distribution along the actors in the food systems. So I was actually catched by these articles like 2 weeks ago, where basically, we were facing a crisis on wheat. So there's been a dramatic, let's say, adverse condition this summer. So the wheat production has been dropped worldwide, and due to the adverse environmental conditions, except a high drought, in particular in the US and Canada, and also in Europe. And and this actually is affecting our daily life. So it's getting real also for the common people, not just for the scientists. So what Smart Proteins does? Well, it's one of the most innovative plant-based projects. It will last for 4.5 years, since 2024, and is with a coalition of 33 partners coming from 20 countries. And as I mentioned before, it's a new fund project, search project with 9 million budget. So it's very ambitious budget, it's very ambitious project that basically aims to deliver solutions, innovation in prototyping and also in processing. But let's see in much more in details. Here, the consortium member, as you see, since I think the food nutrition is not an European issue, is a global issue. So the approach we use here, we also, ask to join the coalition also countries that basically are not EU member states. So in particular from Israel, Switzerland, Thailand, New Zealand, and US. Because I think, as I mentioned before, we need to also see how different perspectives could actually support in addressing some of the key challenges we are facing. What are the products made of? Well, basically, we are focusing specifically on plant proteins, so on chickpea, lentil, quinoa, and faba beans, because all of them can actually well grow in different areas of Europe. But also we are focusing on upcycling some of the side streams coming from bread, pasta, and beer industries, and we are using these side streams for basically for producing fungus proteins. So basically new ingredients that will be used for developing a wide range of the food products. In particular, we are focusing on fish and seafood alternative, pastry, cheese-like, meat-like, infant follow-up formula, and other dairy products. So we try to, let's say, embrace a wide range of food categories because that's what the consumers were requesting. And here, let me also explain that the approach we are using here is not treat people as just as a consumer, because we want to engage citizens as part of the civil society in much more, let's say, ambitious way. So they should start play a key and an active role also in the entire food system, starting in reshaping the food environment in which they are purchasing, processing, and disposing food. Here, I want to show you shortly which are the different protein sources I mentioned before we are targeting. So you said we have the plant proteins, and the idea here is to having a farm to fork approach. So we're addressing also farmers' needs, implementing tools, and in particular, I'm very proud of it. We are, as the first EU project that basically are focusing on regenerative agriculture. So in implementing practicals that basically could allow to improve, to regenerate the health, the soil health and the soil fertility without depleting, and at the same time delivering also raw materials, highly nutritious, that basically can be processed for, for making different products. And the second protein biomass that we are considering is protein biomass coming from brewing industries. There is a huge amount of brewing spent yeast protein that basically can be easily abused in different food categories, specifically in meat analogs, and basically could provide an amazing protein source, and besides is also source of minerals and vitamins. And the last but not least, the fungal protein biomass, as I mentioned before, will be produced by using side streams coming from bread crust from Barilla, for example, or brewing spent is coming from ABI. So, and then you see all these interactions with different protein sources. It's very crucial to let's say, mobilize and capitalize the interaction between food, with protein sources to make them as useful as possible. Here, I want to just show you briefly, as I mentioned before, the farm to fork approach. So in this smart protein, we have several work packages, and here you see we move from primary production, protein extraction, concentration, food processing, food nutrition, and health. Because we always say, increasing protein content, plant protein content in your diet is something that basically improve your health status. But we need to prove this, because most of the time this statement is true when you are consuming the whole products as it is. So, but when we are processing it and producing protein concentrate, protein isolates for implementing different products, we are leaving some of the let's say the co-passengers ingredients like fibers and minerals, and this has to be taken into consideration to make sure that basically the statement we are going to make later on will be fulfilled. And then of course, we need to make, when we talk about sustainability, it's not just a social sustainability or environmental sustainability, but also is economic sustainability. So giving a meaning, economic meaning, also for different partners involved in the food system to embrace financially also this shift. And that's why we are also have a work page focused on exploitation and business development. Of course, consumer study is a key aspect, because we need to provide products that basically are enjoyable, but also that basically help consumers to have a true food experience where they sit on the tables. And of course, engagement in consumer engagement, living labs experiments are gonna be implemented as well. And then of course, sustainability assessment will be a main aspect that basically will cover all the steps of the food system in order to make sure that basically what we are gonna proposing would be an improvement of the status quo we have at the moment. Of course, here the main outcomes, as I say, since we are targeting farm to fork, we are focused on agriculture, so developing standard operational procedures for implementing regenerative practices at agriculture at farming level, and in processing, also producing high quality plant protein ingredients, and that basically can be scaled up. And also beside this, also the protein coming from mycelium and mycelium cake, it will be also implemented and validated and demonstrated at industrial level. Converting as well here, converting these plant proteins in desired products with a high acceptance, consumer acceptance in terms of structure, flavor, color, and also nutritional profile. Of course, we are not alone. In the EU, we were able to support funding other 3 different projects on the same call. And this project is Susan Chain focusing on alternative protein coming from insects. Then we have a ProFuture focusing on protein coming from microalgae. And then we have next-gen proteins as well, also focusing on microalgae and single-cell proteins. So the idea, and we are also in contact with them, the idea is to develop an European coalition of alternative food proteins, so to provide science evidence and that basically could support policymakers or policy shapers to take a bold actions in supporting and endorsing this protein transition. Let me thank you for your attention, and I will be very happy to answer all any questions you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emanuele. That was very interesting. And as I mentioned earlier, anyone who has questions, just post them in the chat and I'll bring them up in the panel discussion at the end. Now, thank Emanuele and invite Malin Björk from who is a member of the European Parliament representing the Swedish Left Party. Thank you, Emanuele.
Thank you very much. I will not have a presentation that a PowerPoint presentation that you will so you will have to follow me as I'm speaking instead. In this digital room, many of you are experts on these issues, and my role is of course slightly different. I'm an elected representative for the Swedish Left Party. It's a feminist, it's a green party, it's a party that has animal welfare and climate concerns at the very heart of our political work. And in my work in the European Parliament, I'm a member of the Committee on Environment and Public Health. And so as such, this committee, it's very interesting now that this committee, since the last election, this was not the case before, since the last elections, this is the biggest and most influential, I would say, committee in terms of numbers of members of European Parliament that have chosen to sit there. And as such, I think it shows the increased interest for these issues. Of course, it is the Greta Thunberg and other young people's effect, the mobilization that was so big before COVID hit and pushed everything back, that made these issues be put much higher on the agenda of other political parties that had maybe not been so keen on working with these issues before. So we welcome very much that from the Swedish Left Party, and together with other progressive forces in the European Parliament, we're trying to make the most out of this increased attention, increased weight of the European Parliament Committee on Environment and Public Health. So please check that committee out, be in touch with the MEPs in that committee, especially those that are maybe not so not the usual suspect in terms of being allies in these issues. Because I think they need to be much more informed about the issues at stake. So my role in this field is, of course, to rely on the expertise that you are providing, that you're generating, the kind of partnerships that you are developing, and our job in the Parliament is then to negotiate, to get the best possible deals. We also have a platform to influence public opinion, and that's what we try to do. And ultimately, in my case, of course, together with my peers in the Parliament, we actually make laws that will influence how we handle these issues for decades to come. However, unfortunately, the ones that are parties that are green and red are not enough, I would say. So the deals that we are reaching for the moment are not very satisfactory, and I will come back to that. But I think this event in itself is extremely important. Not only it gathers expertise, but it also gathers, the momentum for public opinion and builds up for change. So that is actually something extremely important. I think politically that there are different avenues and openings to decrease meat consumption and move away from conventional and ever more intensive animal farming. And I think the different avenues doesn't exclude one another, But sometimes, of course, politically, there are windows of opportunity of different nature and possibilities. And I have to say that I think we have to pursue them all, but I want to highlight some of the avenues that I think we have to work on, and they are linked, of course, as you will know in this fora. But I will then maybe highlight the climate concerns, because that's where I think most political action can and is being taken right now at EU level, at least. But another approach that we are working in the Swedish Left Party and in the left group in the European Parliament is an animal welfare approach. And there are EU laws and regulations in this field, but they're not properly implemented, and many of them are too weak. And they do not, as you know here, per definition, aim at decreasing meat and animal product consumption. So there are inherent problems in those that the animal welfare approach. However, I think we have to also pursue that one. The second has been highlighted by Jeroom already, that people's interest in actually accessing quality food, more ecological, that are in line with sustainable consumption and production models. The kind of awareness that what I eat is maybe not what the planet can take this anymore, and it's not good for our bodies either. So in that sense, decreasing meat consumption, for example, we have a very strong case because what we eat is not like any other product. It's what we eat, what we put into our bodies, what we have on our plate, what we share with our friends, what we meet around, what we, as in meeting between people. And I think that in that sense, how we produce food is a very specific field. And I very much think that we should build on that. It's not like speaking about electronics or iPhones or bikes or something else. It's what we eat. So I think that is a case, and people care about that, and they care about how it's being produced. And I think that one attempt to really take that essence of what this means is contained in the farm to fork strategy. Again, this is not something that has been. Now I have. You have to leave. I have little 11-year-olds here. Sorry for that. So I think this farm to fork strategy, and again, some of you are extremely familiar with it, probably. It was presented by the European Commission. The European Parliament is working on it. I have the pleasure that one of my colleagues from the left group, Anja Hazekamp, is working on it from our side. And of course, here, there's an opportunity to look into the whole, all the elements of this. And I mean, then it's about sustainable food consumption, it's about public health, it's about food production, it's about climate, pesticides, animal welfare. And I think that is very much an area where we have to be able to input. We have voted a much better text in the European Parliament than the Commission presented. So I would, very much invite you to read it and to work with us to make that a reality also, to make sure that a more progressive view on food production and food consumption is actually what is prevailing from all this work that we have done on this on this strategy. Then, if I then turn to the area where I think we have a leverage at this moment, and that can vary, but at the moment, I think the climate concerns is a very, very what's a fertile ground to work on these issues of decreasing meat consumption and animal husbandry at this moment. So there's great public mobilization. There is objectively a climate emergency that we won't be able to address if we don't also address meat consumption. So there is also a lot of political pressure to act on this level. And you can see that at EU level, there are now many, many proposals to address climate concerns. However, many issues are competing in this field. As you will know, there is the issue of energy consumption, there is the issue of housing, of transport, and I recognize that we have, and I say we as actors that actually want to put the agenda of the destructive high levels of meat and animal product consumption on the agenda. We are lagging behind in making sure that our issues are also at the forefront on the climate agenda. So although we have the European Green Deal is being put forward step by step with several legislative proposals, and maybe in the discussion we will have the possibility to address some of them. And there are big commitments to reduce carbon emissions and also including emissions of methane and nitrous oxide to meet the Paris obligations. And also the farm to fork strategy include this, and there is also a methane strategy out there from the European Commission. But this I would say that this agenda is still like the little cousin of the big climate agendas of transport, energy, and housing. And we have a lot of work to raise awareness about the impact that our current food production systems have on the climate. The greenhouse gas emissions from animal farming, and you know this, but I think it's really a key thing that we have to repeat, that the greenhouse gas emissions from animal farming in the EU account for 17% of the EU total emissions, and in many ways do more damage to the climate than cars and vans put together. That's an analysis from 2020. And I think many politicians and policymakers and lawmakers do not take this into account properly. Then there are also other shortcomings in the EU Green Deal, and the overall target, of emissions reductions is too low in our view from the Swedish Left Party. And that's what we have. The EU climate law is already voted, but I think we have to monitor all these different legislative acts that are coming forward now. I do want to say something on the elephant in the room. Maybe it's maybe not an elephant in the room here. People, many of you have worked many years with the Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP at EU level, which, as you know, is one of the areas where the EU has most money put into it. Our member states pay money to the EU to then subsidize our farmers. And from the Swedish Left Party, we think that's a bad model overall. It's very centralized in a way that when you want to change something, it's very slow, or even, as it proved this time around, impossible. Together with colleagues in the left group, again, we have worked very hard in relation to the Common Agricultural Policy to try to reduce subsidies that are just, these direct payments that go to farms, regardless of what kind of agriculture or forestry they have. And I think we do have an uphill battle here still. So in that sense, the strategic plans for the coming years, they were approved, renewed a couple of months ago. I think the deal was here just before the summer. I mean, it means business as usual to a dreadful extent. And the principle is still to support conventional agriculture, including the meat industry, and its subsidized producers are paid mostly on volume rather than what kind of environmental or other objectives that are met. So I think the reform of the Common Agricultural Policy, as it was negotiated and agreed by the big political forces in Europe today, it is a failure. It's a failure when it comes to climate, it's a failure when it comes to biodiversity. And I think it has been denounced by all major environmental actors at this moment. However, I think, not being dystopian, of course, we have to make sure and work at national level when these plans are rolled out, that there is increased focus on sustainable food consumption and food production. And then issues such as plant-based protein, etc., that you have spoken about here, will be key to that. Again, the European Parliament is a political space. We make laws, we have lots of possibilities to make to raise public opinion, to provide platforms, and we are committed to do that from the Swedish Left Party, from the left group in the parliament, but also with other progressive actors that work together with me in the Committee on Environment and Public Health in the European Parliament. And I think such a hearing as today of the alternatives, that policymakers cannot say that we have to continue business as usual because there are no alternatives. That thought, that line of thought, and that line of reasoning, it just doesn't hold anymore. So it's up to us to prove and to give visibility to the actions that you have presented here today, and to continue to push for the need to transform, And doing that means that we also have to push up this agenda, the Vego agenda, let's say, alongside energy, transport, and housing when it comes to the addressing the climate emergency. I think I will stop there and come back to any other things in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malin. And then I invite everyone to participate and we'll have a discussion. So you're welcome to unmute and turn on your cameras, Jeroom and Emanuele. Everyone is not in yet. So Jeroom and Emanuele, you can turn on your cameras so we can see you.
I can.
Yeah, the host stopped us.
Ah, have I stopped you? Oh, sorry. Sorry. I'll turn you on again then.
Yes, I'm there again.
Yeah, thank you. So, sorry for that.
Don't worry.
I'll just start by asking about the actual need for reducing meat consumption and animal farming. There have been some different research on this, how much meat can we actually eat globally in a sustainable way. But I guess this also, the answer to this question might differ on what other sustainability measurements you take. But from your perspectives, how much must we actually reduce our meat consumption? And from the European perspective, where we also import a lot of meat, how much must we reduce the consumption of meat? What are the actual needs? What do you say, Jeroom?
Yes, I always refer to the proposal for a maximum amount of meat consumption per capita per person. This is made by the Eat Lancet Commission. It's also from Sweden, I guess. They proposed a maximum of 16 kilogram meat per capita per year. And on EU level, the average meat consumption, I think, is 68 kilograms per person. So this would mean that it's 25% of what we eat now. So this is a fast reduction. Yeah, and this is based on health arguments, but also the planetary boundaries like climate change and deforestation, etc. So when it's only health-related motivations for maximum meat consumption, then I think we should eat half of what we eat now or 40% less. So there's a difference. And that's why we also introduced the concept of a meat overshoot day compared to the Earth overshoot day. So that's a day in the year where consumers eat all the meat you should eat in 1 year. So this can be in June or September, depending on is it health or environmental based arguments.
Yeah, Emanuele, do you agree with this? Do you have a point on this as well?
Well, definitely, I totally agree with what Jeroom was mentioning so far. What I would like to point out here that this is not an European issues. This is a global issues, and it's getting even worse because I think after a couple of years working on this project, I realized that action has to be taken also in the low-income countries. And I explain you why, because in their countries, actually, the wellness is getting there. So this means also there are much more consumers are willing to buy and eat meat. Also, the place where the most natural resources are still available. So we need to let's say, guide them and provide the strategies to not make the same mistakes we did 50 years ago. Because in Europe, we were able to, with the green revolution, we were able to make food cheap, but we were not able to make healthy food cheap. And this is the big issues we have in the front of us. But definitely 50% reduction is ambitious, and I think is doable. I think Europe is putting so much effort also on the research side to develop and investigate solutions that basically are not just feasible on the lab scale, but actually will be feasible in industrial scale. So, and something that basically will become reality in a few years. Because also another aspect that I need to point out that Europe has a huge efficiency in protein, because we are competing with other big name like China for protein sources, that basically we are used to purchase from South America. And now we need to find a way to get self-sufficient at European level, to get proteins not just for food, but even for feed. So this is a quite challenging aspect, but basically I think Europe is going the right direction. As I mentioned before, Europe Horizon 2020 and Europe Horizon is putting so much effort and hope in developing solutions that basically will bring us forward and able to embrace these transitions in the best possible way, financially, socially, and also on environmental point of view. Thanks.
Yeah, Malin, from the political perspectives, do you have in the Left Party and the others you collaborate with some goal for reducing meat consumption and meat production?
Well, not in terms of when we work in the European Parliament within the left group, and we haven't percentage target. It could be discussed whether we should have that. I think it would be quite difficult to agree depending on countries and context. But I think the important thing that what we do agree on is that we have to transform away from today's meat consumption. And I do agree that it is also, you speak about tax on meat. That's one very possible way of transforming. And I think the campaign that you are gearing up for Glasgow is extremely important. What we have worked to do a lot, because I speak a lot about the EU level also, because that's where I have the possibilities for change. It is to stop subsidies. because the common agricultural policy is full of subsidies that are detrimental to climate and welfare. So we want to stop those, while as the EU doesn't have taxation powers in that sense. There is VAT. So if one goes the VAT way, then of course it's a discussion we have to have at the EU level. I think we would first like to phase out the harmful subsidies and then look at way of pricing. That would be a way to actually price better also. But certainly my part is open for those discussions. I think looking globally also, and I didn't mention that in my introduction, is that we have, the EU has, the member states have delegated to the EU to negotiate international trade agreements. And here, again, I think we have a big task to considering what you said, Emanuele, also to make sure that those trade agreements are not counterproductive in what we want to achieve for the countries that we are trading with, or for at the European level. Because at the moment we import like feed proteins, we import meat, we import products that in terms of climate and environmental impact is just disastrous. And we have no means in those trade deals to stop that for the moment. We can maybe come back to also the carbon border adjustment mechanism that has been proposed by the European Commission now, which is where I'm the negotiator for the left group. And we haven't started the work in Parliament yet, but it would be very interesting to see with you how we can try to insert the issue of meat and food consumption and also imports for feed, because that's not included for the moment in the proposal. It's completely omitted. It's out, as I said, is usually not as much on the agenda as it should be. So it would be very interesting to look at how that could be included. But we have to start by stopping the EU-Mercosur trade agreement, also from this perspective.
Yeah, I feel like it's important with the trade agreements, and for me it's kind of a mystery how they are formed, these trade agreements. But if you stop subsidizing the meat industry, you also have to see to it that we don't just import more meat, because then we haven't really gained anything. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, Malin, or if you said what you had to say.
No, it would be very interesting to hear if you already have thoughts, Jeroom and Emanuele, on the how such a carbon border adjustment mechanism could also embrace, mechanisms that would have a positive impact when it comes to the animal farming industry. So knowing that for the moment it's not even in the current proposal, but the Parliament has the possibility and the powers to propose changes to the legislation. That's what we are for. We are there as co-legislator in this process now that it's just starting.
Yeah. Jeroom, do you have any comments to this?
Yes, I think a carbon border adjustment mechanism for meat imports, also dairy imports, maybe soy imports, could be a good thing to do. And it could be justified by data from the FAO, the Agriculture UN organization, where they have data on greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram beef or pork produced in different countries in the world. So that could be a justification that in countries like Brazil, where there are no climate policies and where greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram beef, for instance, or chicken are very high, that then you have an import tax from those countries, from their meat products to the EU or soy. I think that would be really great to do, and it's really needed. Another option would be to have just consumer taxes on meat at supermarket level, and then also the imported meat or dairy products would be part of this tax. So it's the end consumer who pays this tax. So then imported products are treated equally with meat produced from your own country. So that's another way we can reach the same goals. And to be honest, taxing meat only on the carbon, so the greenhouse gas emissions, that's only a part of the problem. There are also a lot of other environmental emissions like nitrogen, particulate matter, biodiversity loss that should also be priced. So that's why we think a consumer tax would be best, and then a very high consumer tax, not just a tariff increase from 15%. That's a low increase, and then consumers will still eat meat because the price is nearly the same. It's just a little bit more. So we think if you do it, you have to make it at least 20% or 40% or 50% more expensive, and then people will react and consume less meat. So yes, a carbon border adjustment mechanism can help, but I am afraid that this tax is quite low, and then the imports still are coming.
If I may add, definitely I can see there is no gold solution. But I think there is a multi-strategy that basically can actually put in place. And developing in EU-based protein alternatives is one of them, because we'll actually also, this will generate new jobs opportunities, and there's also, it is something also important, and in particular, so far, you know, the plant-based movement from industry point of view is still rich on the small SMEs. And this actually has, I think, is a unique strength that we have. Definitely CAP, definitely reforming the CAP system is essential. But I think we can actually possibly use the same system and moving from compliance to performance. So we are not paying farmers for let's say, growing this or growing that, but in how much the farmers are actively put in place strategies to mitigate the climate change that basically his activities is generating. So it's something, of course, it takes an active, let's say, role of farmers itself, you know, and it's not easy. But I think moving, as I mentioned before, from compliance to performing, I think it could be also a way to help the farmers to still have a chance to do their job, but in a better way that basically will not affect the future of our planet.
Thank you. I think I'll pick up. There's a question now in the chat from Ola, who is asking Emanuele about influencing consumers and building trust and acceptability. And he asks, do you have any examples where the plant-based alternatives are demanded and preferred by consumers today? And in those cases, why?
I mean, definitely there are very excellent examples, not the vegetarian butcher, the Impossible Burger, and Beyond Meat, and are all successful stories that basically shows that is it possible to deliver alternative meat analogs that basically are perceived as tasty and as the animal-based products. Of course, it takes a lot of work because when I mention food products, I mention food experience. You know, consumers are very much linked to, you know, to the flavor, to the texture, to the color. So they want to really enjoy the time when they are eating and what they are eating. So definitely matching with this experience the consumer have by delivering alternative solution is quite challenging. And that's why also the EU is actually investing a substantial amount of money now in research and innovation in this specific area. It's possible, and we are going to be there. I'm quite confident in the 2024 when this project will be ended. All the protein categories I mentioned will be industrially validated and demonstrated. So there is still challenge on ahead of us, but I'm quite confident that we are gonna be there. The problem that here, not the problem, the challenge is that first of all we should stop calling them consumers and start calling them citizens, because every time they are purchasing products on the shelf, they are making a political action, and you know, and they should be aware of this. Most of the time when you go to the grocery, you just buy because you need stuff, but without truly thinking which could be the consequence of your choices at the grocery. So I think also this domain need to be reshaped a little bit, and it takes a long time and also a multi-strategic approach, you know, to reshape, as I mentioned before, the food environment. So maybe, for example, retailers, caterings, canteens, is very important also to help the citizen to make the right choice. So to develop an environment where basically they are, let's say, engaged and willing to now make a personal decision that basically will affect their life, but also the sustainability of the community where it's living.
Yeah, I was thinking also. Yeah, my mic is on. I was thinking also about that we actually eat more and more meat all the time, and just a few decades ago we ate considerably less meat per capita. So is there also not just an issue of producing meat substitutes that taste like meat, but also perhaps communicating around whole vegetables and beans and things like that, to get people to scale back to a former level of meat consumptions? Is that something you look at as well, as just how you communicate the issue of eating in a different way?
Well, you know, there are several strategies. Also, citing fews. Also, how the food has been positioned in the shelf is actually has a huge impact. And also considering that the majority of us, have a very frenetic life, so their eating out is basically not a constant, and then that's why we are focusing on retailers and caterings and restaurants, because they should also help consumers to, let's say, be more inclined to swap their dietary habits. But the most I think what is important is to help the citizen to get, let's say, really understand the powerful role they could play in changing things. So, and also reconnecting food with the primary production. This is something very crucial. I mean, most of the time, if you ask kids where this chicken come from, say from the store, from the grocery. So having a better connection, a better understanding of the general system, without having the discussion, but giving them the key points that basically allow us to have a better understanding of the role they could play, is very crucial. Consumers are very lazy sometimes, because you say, okay, I put on the label, I say I wrote down how much fat and much sugar, and but most of the time they're not reading. So we need to create an environment that basically have required less effort also from a consumer perspective to engage with the better choices. So it's a kind of a consumer behavioral, let's say, science that basically has to deliver information and solution to make this change. But definitely it's not easy. But also the public engagement, politicians could have played a huge role. I mean, in one of the projects, I'm thinking to engage a TV star or bloggers or influencers, that basically everything that basically could actually catch citizen attentions on specific topics. So I need to play with the tools that basically are more effective nowadays to reach consumers.
Yeah, I was thinking about Malin's perspective on this. That what role do you think meat substitutes have, and also maybe you have some comments on the act of actually building opinion through choosing what you consume in the store. Is this something you think is important for how easily it will be to implement political measures?
You tell me if I didn't catch the question as you wanted me to answer to it. I think it's extremely important to have alternatives when we move towards the political goal of decreasing meat consumption. Of course, we have to have alternatives. Young people are already, many of them, choosing to eat less meat. It's a fantastic thing. Just let's build on that. They are the future. If they get used to not eating meat, then that's a habit they will bring on, and they mostly do it according, at least for Swedish youth. It's because of climate reasons, most of them. I think that's and they will come home and say to their parents, I don't want to eat vegetarian. I want to eat vegan. I want to change this. So of course, in terms of consumers, we have big powers here. There's a big movement there. I think we must be fueling that movement, and whether that's based on animal welfare concerns or whether it's built on climate and biodiversity concerns. I think that on the other hand, where I'm sitting, making European level laws, we have a system that subsidizes climate detrimental and biodiversity detrimental food production. I cannot take responsibility for that. I have to work to stop those subsidies. And you say that the consumer, in the end consumer, is the key to everything. Well, I do think that the political level on subsidizing what is detrimental to the climate, to the environment, has a big responsibility. And that's what we continue to do. So the national plans that will be formulated now on the basis of a quite dysfunctional common agricultural policy, they still have the possibility to gear towards plant-based proteins, to gear towards campaigns that actually promote non-animal products in the food system. There is the power to do that. But many governments will still fund meat campaigns, eat more meat. The EU is funding eat more meat campaigns. I mean, it's the world upside down. I think so in terms of the political messaging that is coming out of the EU, it's wrong now. And we that work at the EU level at least have a responsibility to do all we can to change that. And on the other hand, then join up with you in Glasgow and other places to say we can and we will and we must start to think differently and produce differently, and also gear then the different mechanisms that we will choose to use, whether that be in some countries a meat tax, in some other countries other targets in terms of having, if you have higher ecological and biodiversity demands on food production, it will de facto also privilege decreased meat consumption and also as in the left, we also want more, what do you call that, sustainability when it comes to food production, so local production, etc., with high demands on both animal welfare and ecological biodiversity and climate concerns, so that we de facto transform the whole food sector. But we have, I would say that the way the money is geared, it's not at the moment helping us. But as I said, I'm not dystopian, so I think this is, we have to take the fight in the different institutions and levels where we are at, but having alternatives, alternatives to have on the plate is like a prerequisite, I think. But yeah, we are there. It shouldn't be that difficult.
Have you noticed that the increased interest for vegetarian food among young people and others also has made the issue more politically easy to propose, or less that you get perhaps less people who want to stop these things just because of the opinion has changed? Addressing Malin here.
Excuse me, I didn't know. Did you want me to come in again?
Yeah, I was just asking a follow-up question about, do you think the opinion or the increased interest for vegetarian and vegan food and less meat consumption has made the issues of lessening the meat consumption on the political level? Has it been easier to talk about these questions with other politicians? And
Definitely, and I think this is, I try to say that the ones of us, like this, my party has had decreased meat consumption and decreased dairy products for a long time on our political agenda, but the surge, the big mobilization for climate for climate targets now, especially among young people, has changed. It's a game changer. It's a game changer on many levels for other policy areas also, but it is definitely here also. And if you ask young people today, many of them go vegan or vegetarian because of climate. That's at least the case in Sweden. I don't know if you have data from other countries. So we have to build on this, and they will also, via them, they will change for the other person. And I'm just thinking, I have a question here to Jeroom and for the. What about a climate tax on food consumption as opposed to a meat tax because then we would capture maybe a broader spectrum of production. That's just these are thoughts that we have in but as I said, the tax powers at EU level are limited, but at national level it's discussions that we have to have, of course.
Yeah, I'll let Jeroom in. He had some comments on the earlier questions, and you can also answer the question about the climate taxes on food.
Yes, I think a climate tax on food would be a very good idea, because this also indeed relates to a lot of interests also of politicians and actual discussions. But the question is how to do it. You can do it on the farm level, and I heard that the European Commission now committed to publish a proposal how to tax greenhouse gas emissions from farmers. They will present a report, I think, in December, about how to apply the polluter pays principle in the agriculture sector on greenhouse gas emissions. So I hope that there will be a proposal which is very good. And and in the same time, the Commission also wants to pay farmers for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, like carbon farming, and subsidize them. So it could be a mixed system of payments, but also so taxes, but also payments and subsidies. So I hope the Commission will start this way and yeah, do this. But another option could be is to have taxes on greenhouse gases at the consumer level in the supermarkets, and let the supermarkets pay, and that they are obliged to calculate the greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram food product, and then yeah, just so then have to pay the tax to the government. So that's another option. So I think it wouldn't be really fair to tax the farmers. They already have low incomes, so I think there will be protests from farmers. So that's why I think a consumer tax would be more fair, and let the consumer pay for. Well, who is the polluter? Is it the farmer, or is it the consumer who buys the product, who buys the meat? So that's a big question. And I have one other question to Malin also, because the 10th of September, there was a vote about the farm to fork strategy in the European Parliament. And there was one amendment about food prices. And one of the items there was a VAT reform, that food products like vegetables and fruits with very low impacts on health or climate should have a zero VAT tariff rate. This was also proposed by the EU Commission, so this was confirmed by the Parliament that this is a good idea. But there was also in the amendment announced that products with a negative impact on environment or public health should go to the high VAT tariff. So, and there was a large majority for this amendment, also from the Christian Democrats and from Renew, the Liberals, and the Socialists and the Greens, of course. So I was very glad to that this majority is there. But how do you think, what would be the next step? What will the member states do with this? And how can the European Commission now make this, that this will be implemented?
Is this a return question to Malin?
Yes.
So Malin, you can answer if you want, and then we let Emanuele also comment.
Well, if I could be responsible for the European Commission, I would do things differently, believe me. But let's see what, I think there were many very positive things voted in the European Parliament, our committee's position on the farm to fork strategy. And one of those were the ones that you mentioned around here. I know that these negotiations at member state level on VAT are very complicated, are very sensitive for different issues, and it took years before they could agree on like changing tax on books or things like that. So I think that the most sure thing to make this move, we have clear we have clear positions from the Parliament now, is that we put pressure on our government so that we get a few champions among the member states that would actually be prepared to put this high on their political agenda. And that's what we were saying here before also, that let's use this momentum around primarily climate concerns, but that also have this potential to open doors that were maybe not even half open before. So get some member states to champion this now in the negotiations. It would be very important. That's my best guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Emanuele, do you have any comments on this?
Just an observation, because here we are talking about tax. But one of the aspects that basically also the EU is putting a priority is to make sure that the food of the future will be affordable. And this is also a crucial aspect, because in particular, if you buy a plant-based meat analogs, it's definitely higher in price than a steak or a hamburger. So if we want to push this shift, we need to also provide conditions for consumers, in particular for the most vulnerable groups, to have the options, the chance to also play their role. So affordability, accessibility is actually two aspects that basically has to be taken into consideration for any strategies that basically will be implemented in the near futures, because also addressing the vulnerable groups will be, I think it will be a key to also make a change for those other people that basically are much in a better position. So, and you know, with the pandemics we had hopefully on our back, you know, we also see a different group of vulnerables to basically rise. And also with the huge immigration system we have, also we have people that basically foreigners that has a difficulty with the languages, also with integration with our societies. There's also other aspects that basically has to be taken into consideration if we want to make foods that basically appeal to them. So it's another recommendation, and we are working on this because, you know, affordability is something that basically has to be very high on agenda in any projects that basically we are developing, because sustainability has to be also from a financial side, in particular from those families that they could not afford to buy healthy food.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, we're nearing the end here, but if someone wants to give a closing remark, or I'll leave the floor open.
Just one remark I'd like for ending. Even in the Green Deal, we are still considering food as a commodity, not as a common good, because depending the way we are framing food, we are also implementing different strategies, you know, to improve, you know, our conditions. So, and I think we need to move a little bit away from, you know, treating food as a you know, a tradable good, but try to see that basically this, as I say, as a common good, where basically different forces are playing. You know, is okay, the market, of course. Also, we have you know, national, international regulations, and also we have a civil society that basically all of them has to play a role and make the meaning of foods slightly different from what we are used to see nowadays.
Yeah, that's interesting to start looking at food in perhaps a different way, from a different perspective. So, do Jeroom or Malin want to say something before we close?
Yes, but Jeroom, please go first.
Yes, just a short remark on affordability. I think governments should not only tax unhealthy or unsustainable food products, but also subsidize healthy foods like vegetables and fruit, so that everybody, but especially the vulnerable groups and the low-income groups, that it's really easy for them to buy healthy products. I think this is, in the end, it will benefit all if we would do it. And some countries like Brazil already do it with food stamps for low-income groups, that they can buy healthy lunches. I think healthy lunches at offices should be free or subsidized very much. That I think that would be a very good idea to do. And it can be paid by the generating taxes on unhealthy food products like sugar and meat, etc.
Thank you. Then I'll let Malin close.
Yeah, I would just say that I think we have a momentum when it comes to climate change and the willingness to address that. I think there we can set targets, but we can also explore different instruments that we can use. I think they have to be holistic. I think they have to be targeting also the full chain from the production to the consumer. And in that sense, I think it is key that we stop subsidizing what is harmful and we start supporting financially the production, and not only the consumer, the production of what is sustainable, and that is certainly would certainly mean a decrease in meat and dairy consumption. And I would agree, and I tried to say that in the beginning. This is not any commodity. This is not any commodity. It's food. It's what we have on our plates, and we have to use that argument as well. But once again, I do think that we should influence the producers, and from my perspective, the consumer cannot be the key to everything. But we have, as highest political level, a responsibility to try to steer production in as well. Thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And by that, I thank the panel, Jeroom, Emanuele, and Malin, and also the audience. Thank you for listening. And by that, I'll conclude this webinar. And I can also say that it will be on our YouTube channel tomorrow or later this next week, so that you can see it again or spread it to whoever you think might be interested. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.